Tuesday saw the fourth day of US and Israeli attacks on Iran as the conflict continues to escalate. The Iranian Red Crescent says the death toll in Iran has risen to about 800 as Tehran is pounded from the air. The United States says it has hit more than 1,700 Iranian targets. Israel also hit Lebanon with strikes in Beirut and in the southern part of the country. Meanwhile, Iran has fired more missiles at Israel, and tensions across the region continue to rise as other nations are increasingly being pulled into the crisis. US President Donald Trump gave his latest rationale for the US-Israeli attack at the White House on Tuesday.
It was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand.
So to discuss all of this, joining me now is political scientist and author Kaveh Afrasiabi. His book is entitled Trump and Iran, From Containment to Confrontation. Also with us from London is Abdel Bari Atwan. He is editor-in-chief of al-Youm. Joining the discussion too is Negar Mortazavi. She's a journalist and political analyst, and she's the editor of the Iran podcast. And from New York, we're joined by Brian Becker. He is the executive director of the Answer Coalition. Welcome to all of you. Brian Becker, as we reported, this is day 4 of this conflict, which began when Israel and the United States attacked Iran on Friday night last week into Saturday morning. What is your assessment of where this conflict is going right now, and who's in control of where it goes to from here?
Well, I think we're definitely on the escalation ladder. I think that will continue to be the case. The Trump administration made it clear from day one that the goal is to overthrow the government of Iran. Iran is a country of 90 million people, larger than France, larger than Germany, larger than the UK. It's got a big military. It's a very strong regional power. It has China as a principal trading partner. 90% of Iran's oil goes to China. When you have a government put in a position where a big power, the biggest military power in the world, has declared that they intend to topple the government, the Iranian government has no option other than to fight. If they just agree to a quick ceasefire, this will happen again in a few months after the Israelis and the American.
Okay, unfortunately, we're having problems with Brian's audio there, but we'll try to get back to him. Kaveh Afrasiabi, you know, every day we look at the newspaper headlines and it says Israel and the US pound Iranian targets. They've been hitting the capital, Tehran. And then also we see the retaliation, a very forceful retaliation by the Iranians as well. Question is right now, it depends on how long this conflict will last. And does Iran have the resilience, the power to, I mean, how long does it have that power for?
Well, I think Iran is very resilient, and they will put up, as we have seen over the past 4 days, a pretty good fight. However, as your other guest just said, you know, they're up against very tall odds. A major Western military superpower has thrown all its weight against Iran, and their intention by now is very clear. Israel and US are intent on Iran's disintegration. Is a plan that goes back to the mid-1970s to divide Iran along sectarian ethnic lines, sow chaos at Russia's back door, and that would be a prelude for Russia's future disintegration. That plan is now in full swings. So Iranians are facing an existential threat, fight for survival, and they will rally around the flag and do whatever they can to prevent this very sinister, evil plan to reach its intended objectives.
Okay, Brian Becker is back with us. Brian, glad to have you back. You were talking about the direction this conflict is taking and where it goes to from here.
Yeah, I agree with the other guests. This is existential for Iran. The U.S. wants to topple the Iranian government and, in all likelihood, dismember Iran. The Soviet Union had been dismembered. Yugoslavia was dismembered. Czechoslovakia is divided. Sudan has been divided. The U.S. Sees the weakening of regional or global powers through dismemberment and regime change as the #1 military tactic. So I believe we're on the path towards greater escalation.
All right. Kaveh Afrasiabi, I just want to get back to a point you were talking about when you said that the goal of the United States and its allies is the disintegration of Iran along ethnic lines. But surely something like this would require the Iranian people to go along with it.
Well, Iran is a mosaic of several ethnic groups. And President Trump just today, in his interview with New York Post, he hinted at arming the militias. That plan is already underway. And we have seen reports of Mossad and CIA arming and training some separatist groups among the Kurds and the Baluchis and so on. And once the central government in Iran is weakened enough, we will see these groups incurring into Iran, setting up zones of influence and so forth, pretty much just like what we witnessed in Syria in 2011, 2012, with the help of perhaps the Saudis who've been in complicity with the United States and so on. So yes, the Iranians, are facing serious challenges, and they are very patriotic and they will fight. But we also have to consider the balance of forces and the concerted efforts by Israel, which has its own ambitions of regional supremacy and extension. And we've seen that Israel has already taken advantage of this by taking over chunks of Lebanese territory yesterday. And, they will continue to do this regardless of how much the Israeli people themselves suffer in Tel Aviv and other Israeli cities.
Abdel Bari Atwan, this conflict in the Gulf has taken the world's attention off Gaza for the time being, just for now, and we've seen what Israel and its allies, the United States, as well as several other countries, including the United Kingdom and European countries, we've seen what they've done in Gaza. They've razed it to the ground. How great is the risk, and do you fear that they plan to do the same thing with Iran?
To be honest, there is a state of anarchy in the Middle East now, in the Arab world in particular. What is happening now in the Gulf region in particular, the Iranians sent more than, 300 missiles and also drones to bomb Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and even Oman. So it is very unstable area until now, and we are just at day 4. And it seems the Iranians are well prepared in this war, and they actually were very clever when they did not start the attack of the Israeli and the American. And also the other point I want to stress here, these Gulf states, small Gulf states, were always waiting for the American to defend them. But it seems, in the last 4 days, the American actually could not actually save them, could not protect them from the Iranian missiles. I think this is the major talks in the Middle East. So, there are bases there, and these American bases were bombed by the Iranian missiles, and also, other countries, also, economic establishment in this rich area in particular were very, very vulnerable and also were bombed by the Iranians. So the Iranians now, they have the upper hand in the Gulf in particular, and also they managed to bomb the Israeli. And the third point is, now the intervention of Hezbollah in Lebanon. I think this will be a very, very hot front against the Israeli, because we know Hezbollah is not far away and has about 7,500 missiles and also more than 1,000 drones. So all this will be used against the Israeli. And also, I'm expecting the Yemenis to join,
Right.
the Houthis to join this war very soon, and some of Iraqi Shiite organization or this resistance organization and troops and groups in Iraq.
Right. Negar, good to see you, Negar. Glad to have you with us. Now, we have heard different reasons from President Trump and his acolytes on why Iran has been struck in this way. There are many, including many in Trump's MAGA movement, who say Trump is acting at the behest of Israel. What do you think? What is your view on why this started?
I mean, if we listen to the contradictory comments of the various figures, President, Secretary of State, Secretary of War, the Vice President, throughout the lead up to the war and then in the past few days, it's been the entire kitchen sink, from freedom for the Iranian people to the nuclear program, which if the nuclear program first of all, the president said that he had obliterated it in the past June. And also, if the nuclear program was really the concern, Iranians were negotiating on that nuclear program. And they offered what the Omani mediators called a really good deal. The IAEA said it's a good deal. And then finally, I think what's leaking through this commentary, which I find closest to truth, is the fact that Iran was going to retaliate. So essentially, the way the administration is framing, characterizing it as a preemptive attack, is that they knew that Israel was going to attack Iran, and that Iran would retaliate hard, and so therefore the U.S. just came in and did that for Israel. So I agree with the other guests. This is just essentially an extension of that, or reestablishing that hegemony, U.S.-Israeli hegemony in the region, and trying to weaken Iran, potentially, if they need, go back into mow the lawn, mow the grass, the way they do, for example, with Lebanon, and then eventually deliver what would probably be close to a failed state that is weak, that would not be a threat to Israel anymore. And that, I think any of these other reasonings is just secondary and trivial. This was very much about attacking Iran again and again, as the US and Israel have done in the past few years.
Negar, after 4 days of this confrontation, which has escalated very, very quickly, do you get the sense now that Trump may be looking for a way out of this? He said today that Iran's military has been, quote, knocked out, unquote. I mean, is there a likelihood that he may be looking for a way to say, look, victory is ours, we've defeated Iran, this is the end of it?
I think so, because honestly, actually, I don't think President Trump is a president of peace, but I also don't think he's a president of war, long wars. He won 2 presidential elections in the US because he campaigned against these long wars, endless wars, regime change wars in the Middle East that previous presidents had launched. And I don't think the continuation of this war is something that's in his interest. His base is very much against it. The American public, time and again, polls have shown majority is against it. He's getting very sharp criticism from Congress. He launched this war without the vote of the US Congress, without consulting the international community, Security Council, etc. And so it's the longer it takes, regime change, endless war, the more unlawful and illegal it's going to look from an international perspective, US perspective, and also the more costly it's going to be. The Israelis, however, I think, want this war to continue. They want to be able to continue to attack Iran with US support. This is not something they can get anytime they want. It takes time and strategy and preparation to bring the US about. It may not be another time that they can do this, and this is something Benjamin Netanyahu has been attempting for the past 2 decades, to try to push the US into an attack on Iran, and he finally got it, a regime change war in Iran. But as far as President Trump, I think even on day 1, he was suggesting that he had good victory. I mean, he assassinated their top leader, the supreme leader. And on day 2, he was suggesting that the Iranians want to talk to him and potentially an off-ramp or a ceasefire. So I think if the Iranians do offer a good off-ramp, he may very well take it. But I'm just not sure if Iran is prepared to do that right now. I think they want to continue a little longer and cause more pain.
All right, Kaveh Afrasiabi, on the question of how this comes to an end and who brings it to an end, the Iranians don't have much of an appetite to bring this to an end right now. They've seen what happens when they got to a ceasefire before, and the Iranians are saying, well, the United States may want to talk about a ceasefire, about ending this conflict, but we're not interested. So what is your view on how this ends?
Well, we can only speculate about the various scenarios. I certainly don't subscribe to that journalistic assessment that we just heard, relying on this superficial rhetoric that Trump has advanced as the psyop in chief to delude the public about his diplomatic intentions, which he has had none. And he has had an anti-diplomacy approach toward Iran, resorting to the rules of diplomacy. Not once, twice he has proved that. And he has just assassinated in cold blood the supreme leader of Iran, as a result of which there is absolutely zero interest on Iran's part to engage in any kind of diplomacy with Iran. And despite the fact that Iran has said that we're not at all interested, Trump goes on TV and says the Iranians are contacting me and saying that let's sit down, but it's too late. That's a big lie, and he will continue to repeat that. But let me add that the reason you see the U.S. aircraft carriers moving out of the Sea of Oman to the Mediterranean, as reported, and the U.S. is, asking all the Americans to flee the region, is because of the fear of Iranian retaliation. Things are not going as scripted, and in fact going rather badly for the U.S. and its crime partner Israel. So if there is any chance for a ceasefire, it wouldn't be because of a change of heart on Trump or Netanyahu's part. It would be because of Iran's resistance and the infliction of pain on their forces.
Abdel Bari, Atwan, there's so many different statements that come out of the Trump administration every day, every hour, in fact, we hear something new. I mean, Trump today was talking about the Iranian military being knocked out. Yet just 24 hours ago, both he and his Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, were talking about, or not ruling out, the likelihood of sending in ground forces, of a land invasion of Iran. Is that likely, or is that now off the table?
I believe the Iranian would be extremely happy if Trump actually sent his ground forces to attack or invade Iran, because they will have the upper hand in this case. But they cannot change the regime in Iran unless they send this ground forces to topple the regime, to fight there. So I think the Iranians are well prepared, and they have a lot of missiles, and they managed to learn their lessons of the last war, last June, actually, which is called the 12 Days War. So now you can see they have managed to send more than 300 missiles to hit the Israeli, and these missiles, it's very, very advanced cluster missiles and hypersonic missiles. And they managed to destroy a great part of Tel Aviv in Israel. And this other thing, which is extremely important, the Iranian actually, they are saying that Trump and Netanyahu started this war, but we will end it. And, we noticed that they managed quickly to organize their house and elect, an interim leadership immediately after the death of Grand Ayatollah. So I think the Iranians are looking for a war of attrition against the United States and against Israel. And it seems they are well prepared for this war, and they are asking their other groups in Yemen and in Iraq and in Lebanon to help them and to start the war. And as I said, it started in Lebanon now, which was not far away from Israel, and north of Israel now, hit by several missiles, more than 20 missiles for the last 3 days only. So I think the Israeli and the Israeli and the American will suffer from the war of attrition. And also, we have to remember that the Shia, is the Muslim Shia, more than 400 million. And those people actually will be on the Iranian ditch, and they will fight with the Iranian. And I'm expecting actually some sort of a Muslim war against the American and against the Israelis. Trump did not think of that at all. And I believe, as I said, the Iranian are prepared and they are going to fight until the end. And they are not actually looking for a ceasefire or negotiation, as President Trump claimed several times for the last 4 days. They are not going to talk. They were deceived.
Yeah.
They realize that he is a liar, big liar. They don't respect his word at all. So, and there is no any fruit of any kind of negotiation between the Iranian and the American and even the Israelis. So I think the war will continue, and I believe a new Middle East will emerge from the rubble of this war.
All right. Negar Mortazavi, Abdel Bari Atwan, they're talking about a Muslim war against the United States and Israel. But in fact, the Iranians took this war in a very different direction very early on, just hours after they were first attacked. When they started attacking Gulf states, these are allies of the United States, many of which actually host military facilities of the United States. It's caused chaos in these countries. The Iranian foreign minister has been talking about it, and this was his explanation for why Iran has attacked these countries. Let's listen.
We have no problem with our countries in the other side of the Persian Gulf. We have friendly relations and good neighborly relations with all of them, and we are determined to continue these relations. What we are doing is, in fact, an act of self-defense and retaliation to the American aggression against us. We are not attacking our brothers in the, in the Persian Gulf. We are not attacking our neighbors, but we are attacking American targets.
Senegal, there we heard the Iranian foreign minister talk about attacking American targets, but we have seen over the past few days where Iran has hit civilian targets in these countries. It's hit airports, it's hit civilian buildings. Actually, yesterday it hit the American diplomatic mission in Riyadh as well. What's the strategy behind this?
Well, first of all, I want to reiterate that the Iranians have threatened and essentially laid out this plan beforehand, that every country that is a host of U.S. bases is going to be seen as complicit in the war, because the war will be launched from not just U.S. assets, but all these bases and installations. The Iranians are not attacking Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkey, these other Muslim brother neighbors. But as far as the Gulf, I think the strategy here is to spread the pain. Well, first of all, make good on that threat, because the threat before the war started turned into diplomacy. It was actually very constructive. Pressure from these powerful Gulf states was put on Washington, potentially even delayed the attack, saying, don't do it. This is going to turn into a regional war. They're serious and everyone's going to feel the pain. But now that the war happened, for Iranians, this is a war of existence. This is for survival. They see themselves going down, and they're doing whatever they have, shooting whatever they have, and not just at U.S. Targets, but also these countries where they see as hosts of the installations, and where the war is coming at them. And I mean, there has been all kinds of discussions as far as Iranians going after, intelligence bases in these countries, just beyond military, or hotels where the forces had been evacuated to. But generally, I think the sense is to spread the pain, to make sure this expands into a regional war, and the neighbors feel the pain, at least the ones that they see complicit, so that the next time that an attack is being planned, there will be more diplomacy and pressure to stop it.
Brian, great to have you back with us. Sorry about all those technical problems, but we've just been talking about these Iranian attacks on smaller Gulf states, talking about the strategy behind that. Do you think now these smaller states like the United Arab Emirates, like Qatar, like Bahrain as well, might be forced to rethink their relationship with the United States, rethink the alliance, the military alliance with the United States, and look at some kind of cost-benefit analysis and say, well, this is not for our good at all?
One would hope so. But when you have foreign military forces and military bases from another country, especially the United States, the most powerful military in the world, you don't really have sovereignty. I mean, it's kind of like what happens with South Korea. Even if the South Korean government wants to do something, they can't really do it without the approval of Washington. So we have a colonial style relationship, even though they're formally independent countries and not colonies, that exist as the reality in the Middle East. And as a consequence, they're drawn into the war because they're functioning essentially as proxies of the United States, whether they like it or not. Hopefully, those governments will reconsider, but again, I'm not certain they have really full sovereignty. I would say they don't.
All right, Brian, I've just got a little bit of time left. If we look at the history of U.S. attacks on other countries in the Middle East, in South Asia as well, they've all been disasters. They've never ended well for the United States. Do you have any reason to believe it'll be different this time?
I think this will be a catastrophe. It's already a catastrophe for the people of Iran, for their neighbors. The danger of a regional war also raises the specter of a global war. If you had asked people in 1913, would there be a global war in 1914? Most people would say no. Or if there was a big war, it would be a quick war. Well, it wasn't. It was a global war. 20 million people died. The danger here is great. Donald Trump is playing with fire. So is Rubio. So is Hegseth. And for what? Iran posed absolutely no threat to the United States. This is a war of choice. It's a war of aggression. And all of humanity may be paying the price for it.
Negar, very quickly, I've got less than 40 seconds. To what extent may the decision makers in Washington be guided by the fact that the economy is going to be taking a hit? We've seen the stock market take a hit, and now the United States is saying that it's going to use its naval forces to guide oil tankers through the Straits of Hormuz.
I think that's a major factor for the Trump administration. President Trump has constantly boasted about, growing the economy, less inflation, more employment, and also oil prices. And it's something the Iranians are banking on very much. So they're trying to also target oil installations and just security, any way they can to try to drive up the prices, the global prices, and put that pressure on everyone, including the U.S. administration.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.